I think somebody hit the off switch, and I don't know why yet.
This whole system has to be overhauled.
Epstein list, P. Diddy list.
You're seeing President Trump execute that through Elon Musk with DOGE. You're seeing it through Secretary Higgs. That's what he's doing right now. Nick LaLota from New York, Congressman, Morgan Luttrell from Texas, and Corey Mills from Florida. Those were the three congressmen that jumped on this from the beginning, and Senator Mark Wayne Mullen from Oklahoma. Those four dudes talk about breathing life into our fight. But as much as they raised issues, the Navy still ignored it. They still kind of kept it off to the side. So it wasn't until after our show where we started seeing that increase in attention. Eli Crane was the first one that came on board after we talked. I talked to you this morning at breakfast about a contact of a contact, put us in touch with the Speaker of the House. That was a huge one. We met with him for a half an hour.
What did he say? How was that meeting?
He was shocked. He was shocked. And he's like, hey, I'm on your side. I'm gonna support you on this one. It was fantastic. And this guy that got us the meeting, just an incredible American, just called me one day. I told you, hey, Brad, can you get to Tucson? I got us a meeting with the Speaker of the House for half an hour if you can make it. I'm like, what? The Speaker of the House? Oh, yeah. Then the big one in there too, we started getting some more senators. Senator Tom Cotton jumped on board. He's a heavy hitter. He started helping. Senator Tommy Tuberville, huge heavy hitter, started helping. I hope I said it right. Tuberville or Tuberville?
Tuberville.
Is it Tuberville?
I think.
I always mess it up. I'm sorry, Senator. Yeah. I always mess it up. Coach is what everyone calls him. His now security advisor, David Jansen, and I become very good friends. But so all of that started growing. And then the one that was really the big pivot point was Congressman Brian Mast from South Florida. Ironically, President Trump's personal congressman. So his chief of staff, Stephen Lighton, links us up from another team guy after our show. And he gives me the time of day, listens to everything. He goes, okay, here's what we're going to do. He had started this new Justice for Warriors caucus. And so he said, this is exactly what this thing exists for. And so he partnered me with the chief of staff, some of his other staff, James Langendorfer and Derek Miller. He said, we're going to draft a letter that'll be from Congress to the Secretary of Defense. And then I want you to schedule a trip to come out to D.C. and we're going to shop this around and try to get as many co-signers as possible. They said the key is you can't come to D.C. without a plan. We're coming with an ask, and all we're asking for is your signature. And so that was really the tipping point after our show, which drove success, because that ended with that first letter that I think we had over 30 senators and congressmen co-sign it.
Wow.
It was powerful, man. And,
wow.
and they were bringing up all the things that we talked about. And it was basically saying, hey, Secretary of Defense, we don't like what we're seeing. These quotes that I mentioned earlier, we're seeing gross ethical violations. We're seeing lack of investigative process. We're seeing a lot of alarming things. They sent it to the secretary in September. Calm, silent from DOD for another little bit. The Navy kept doing all the things we just talked about. And so then they sent a second letter on, I think, December 9th. And then, and that's when they were really mad, because they're like, hey, not only are you ignoring us, you're showing contempt for Congress, but you continue to deny them access to the evidence that we all know vindicates them. What are we doing? And through insiders, we knew that the prosecuting attorney for that board of inquiry, who was doing his own questioning and fact-finding, getting in preparation, was openly discussing with people. He's like, we have no case.
Who orchestrates all these congressmen and senators? I mean,
Dude, there is no master orchestrator.
Is it you guys, the attorneys?
We just flat-footed it. We walked everywhere.
You're driving blind.
Yeah.
And there's so much it was really, really interesting. I learned a lot about Congress, and I learned I never want to be a part of it. It's chaos.
Amen.
It's chaos.
Amen.
But it was great because you saw that relationships matter. And so there was one where I'm with Senator Mark Wayne Mullen in an elevator, and in comes Senator Barrasso, and Mullen's like, hey, I need you to take a look at this. Listen to Brad. He's got an important story. You can trust me. He's like, I need you to be on this team. He's like, sounds good. I'm in. So like in an elevator, all of a sudden you get another signature. Or like Morgan Luttrell and Eli Crane and a couple of those other guys, one of the nights they said, hey, there's a vote on the House floor tonight. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to bring you in with Brian Mast, Chief of Staff, Stephen Lighton, and we're going to have the letter, and then we're going to be all shuttling dudes off the floor into the cloakroom, where you're going to be standing there in your whites, and you're going to give them the 5-minute elevator speech about everything that's happened and what we need and where we're going. And we got I think like 25 signatures that night in about an hour period by people just coming in, listening to the pitch. Some of them were like, hey, I know that dude, I trust him. He signed it, I'm good. So it's really interesting watching how these guys interact, the relationships, and it was incredible because it was frenzy.
Yeah.
It was a frenzy.
What was interesting is who didn't talk to us, though, right? Like,
Right.
that they made this partisan.
Right.
I mean, nobody on the left would talk to us. I mean, at all. It was really interesting. Here we are uncovering institutional corruption, lying to the American people, and not a single, to my recollection, not a single Democrat returned our call. And even stopping.
You did approach him. You
We
called him.
cold called, reached out.
I stopped by my own representatives' offices and said, "Hey, I'm here from Colorado." Not a single response.
Why do you think that is?
I mean, my opinion, and I think what we're seeing is that they generally support institutional corruption as long as it fits their ends, right? And they didn't want to do anything to embarrass the administration in that time period, and didn't want to do anything that could be at all tracked back to an administration that was going to an election. And so they just ignored us, right?
It should be bipartisan issues, though.
Yeah, truth is bipartisan.
Everyone should care about this.
Yeah.
It's a big deal.
What a shame.
What a shame. I mean, it's ironic now that obviously this administration is doing some very interesting things. And I've heard some of the criticisms is, oh, you're politicizing roles that are supposed to be apolitical. And I have to laugh because it's like, no, the people that are being fired allowed those roles to become politicized. This is the correction measure. This is the return to apolitization. And the military should be apolitical. We 100% should be. But we've lost our way as a military, and I think we're seeing the correction come. Great example. I mentioned Beef Drexler. He was one of the other three wrapped into this thing with us. He and I were great, but we were having coffee, and he was telling me how one of his kids, I can't remember whether it was son or daughter, but one of his kids, he was just talking to the kid and said, hey, I'm curious what's going on with all the recruitment challenges and why people aren't joining the Navy and the Marine Corps and the DoD in general. And his kid said, well, yeah, Dad, we all see it at high school level, and it's just become very politicized. And Beef said, well, the military is apolitical, though. And his kid just looked at him, eyebrow raised, like, really? You're going to say that after what's happened to all of you guys? And he had to shrug his shoulders and be like, yeah, you're right. I mean, the public saw this. Kids were seeing it at high school. You can't fool kids. Mm-hmm. They saw the politicization of the military, and now finally we're coming back to focusing on lethality, focusing on war fighting. Like, it was so needed, so needed.
So what was it that kind of turned the tides then? Was it all the congressmen and senators?
It was the two letters. So that second letter, December 9th, they sent it, and it's strongly worded. It's out there. It's released. I would encourage people to read it.
What did it say?
Oh gosh, I mean, like I've quoted, gross ethical violations. Like, this is absurd. They said, we demand at this point you drop all charges against Brad Gary and Eric Ramey, let them retire, and we want a new investigation into the corruption that we have seen here, the institutional corruption we've seen here. As far as I know, they answered the first part. They dropped the charges between me and Eric Ramey, but they've not started an investigation into the institutional corruption. But that was released on December 9th, very, very strongly worded. And then December 12th is when I got the phone call that they were dropping all charges finally.
Jason, what would the repercussions have been had they dug their feet in?
Had they dug their
And
feet
not
in.
dropped the charges with a letter like that, with all those signatures?
I mean, there's no direct repercussions. I think that was one of my more surprising pieces of knowledge gained in this thing is that the military has a large ability to ignore Congress if they want to. Of course, you've got Tuberville who's willing to freeze appointments, right? So maybe you would have seen some downstream freezing on some promotions. But as far as like direct consequences, unless called to a hearing under subpoena, there's almost no direct consequences for just continuing to do what they want to do.
And
So why did they fold?
Well, I actually have a slightly different view. I think it was a combined arms attack here that got us there. But there were some key pieces of evidence released to us. One, the text messages from his phone. Two, a great deal of photos that purport to be of Seaman Mullen's car. And let me just say again, this is our rational perception of the evidence. But what they released to me was tons of photos of drugs black market performance enhancing drugs with used syringes, all kinds of stuff. I mean, reams of stuff were finally produced to us.
Why were those produced to you? What
Finally
took
in
so
discovery. So by linking it to Brad's actions did cause grievous bodily injury or death, right? Even the administrative prosecutor who admitted he didn't have a case despite Rule 3.1 that requires him not to take frivolous actions forward. But despite that, he still understood that they have a discovery obligation that minimally tracked to the NCIS investigation, right? That they had yet to give us. And this was the NCIS investigation that was done like that day. And all of this evidence had been in their hands. And I asked a basic question. I said, okay, so we've got a drug case now. Where's the tox lab results for all the drugs that were in his car, right? And they came back and said, we didn't test them. Now, this is where I start to have significant concerns that when we get to our FOIA information, that we're going to find that the SecNav office stopped the investigation, because there has not been a single NCIS investigation I've ever been associated with, either prosecuting or defending, where NCIS obtained and seized a drug or something purporting to be a drug, even half-used syringes, and did not test the substance. So I think somebody hit the off switch, and I don't know why yet. But that's the only thing that...
So what happens when you find out who it was and why they did it?
I mean, we go public, right?
What does that do? I mean, it's public humiliation. Is that a career ender? Do you have any recourse for
If
that?
they're still active duty and we find that happen, 100%. I mean, now you've got them on, that's unlawful command influence to like an nth degree.
Yeah. I mean, I think the point is that we've always been dedicated to the objective truth record, right? And the objective truth record, thanks to you, has had to play out publicly. And this is an extension of that. That ultimately now we are litigating not just to fully restore Brad, but to make the truth record unassailable, so that all of this crap that they've been saying for years gets cut through and we deal with facts. So that's my interest. My interest now is to not only vindicate Captain Gary, his cadre, and everyone else, but to ensure that the American people see that there is still processes by which we are able to stick to and expose objective truth.
Are there still processes to do that?
Well, I mean, that's part of what we think needs to change. I mean, this whole system has to be overhauled. It's interesting. You know, we referred to what we're seeing this current
I
administration.
don't ever hear anything good happening.
No, I mean, it's not. And I think
They bury who are there. I mean, look,
yeah,
got
Right.
this shit all over my wall over
Yeah.
here. We got the Blackwater guys. They hid the drone evidence. We got the Eddie Gallagher charges. We got your stuff.
Yeah.
Just the other day, I did this interview with Josh Mass. Did you guys hear about that?
I haven't heard that one yet. no.
Adopted an Al Qaeda baby. Now they're trying to.
Oh, that's the Marine?
Yeah, that's.
Yeah,
I mean, it's
I'm
just
tracking
it's just like,
Yeah.
what are we doing here?
Right.
Does anything?
I mean,
All the pardons come out right before the administration change.
Yeah.
Ton of them
The way we've been
with
doing
just like
business doesn't
blanket
work.
pardons.
Yeah.
I mean,
prospective.
is there any justice here anymore? Is serious? I'm not fucking around.
No,
Is there?
Yeah.
No, you can get it. You have to work hard at it. You can't stop. And often you go 10x and you get 1x, right? You get something.
Epstein
right.
list, P. Diddy list.
Bad.
What the fuck is going on, man?
Well, we're seeing, I mean, we were just talking about this in the car. I think what we're seeing with this election is somewhat of it's a beautiful thing, because it's a peaceful revolution in a lot of ways. It's the American public seeing all this happen for so long in so many different forums, saying like, enough. We want radical transparency and accountability. And so you're seeing that. You're seeing President Trump execute that through Elon Musk with DOGE. You're seeing it through Secretary Higgs. That's what he's doing right now. Radical transparency and accountability. And I think the way we've done business in the past is irrelevant because of the things you've talked about on this show, the shift from legacy media to long form podcasts, the shift from trusting a news source to give you the truth to let's actually find out from the source themselves, and stop trusting people to filter, package it up into an executive narrative and give it to me as they see fit based upon their bias. And so it's a massive revolution. And I think we're seeing the same, we're going to need to see the same things in the Navy, in the Department of Defense in general, is a shift to understanding that, hey man, the old days are gone.
No matter where you're watching Shawn Ryan